When my parents knocked on my door after years of silence, I thought maybe they had finally come to apologize. But my mother looked me dead in the eye and said, "You were never wanted. You were just a mistake." And that's when I knew it was finally my turn to take revenge. Before we dive in, you're watching True Revenge, where every betrayal meets justice. Subscribe now so you never miss when karma strikes back. I used to think family was supposed to be the one place where you were safe, where love wasn't something you had to earn, and where no matter what happened, you belonged. But in my house, belonging was a privilege I was never given. From as early as I can remember, I was a child in the shadows, the one who was never hugged, never praised, never wanted. While my brothers were showered with attention and affection, I grew up in silence, watching from the corner as my parents treated me like I wasn't really theirs. I remember reaching for my mother's hand when I was little, hoping she would pull me close. Instead, she pushed me away. Sometimes she wouldn't even touch me unless she was wearing gloves. I didn't understand it back then, but as I grew, I realized what it meant. To her, I wasn't a child. I was an inconvenience, a mistake. My father wasn't much better. He provided food, a roof, and little else. He never asked how I was, never sat with me at night, never once told me he loved me. When I fell off my bike at 7 and broke my arm, I cried in my room for 2 days before anyone noticed. By then, the bone had already started to swell badly. They scolded me for not speaking up sooner, as if their indifference was somehow my fault. My brothers, on the other hand, never had to ask for anything. They were praised for their grades, hugged when they succeeded, comforted when they failed. When they were hurt, my parents rushed to their side. To me, those same parents only offered cold stares and silence. At family gatherings, I was paraded out like a prop. My mother would force me to smile for pictures, but the second the camera clicked, her hand dropped, her eyes emptied, and I disappeared again. I can't count how many nights I lay awake, wondering why it was enough. What was so wrong with me that even the people who created me couldn't care? As I got older, I began to crave attention so badly that even punishment seemed better than being ignored. I started acting out, stealing, skipping school, vandalizing property. I wasn't proud of it, but every lecture, every scolding was proof that at least for a moment, I existed to them. I was reckless, I was loud, and I was desperate. I didn't realize until later that their anger wasn't real attention. It was annoyance. And once my rebellious phase lost its novelty, they went right back to ignoring me. By the time high school ended, I had figured it out. No matter what I did, good or bad, I would never be the golden child. I would never be loved like my brothers were. So I stopped trying. I poured myself into my studies, into working part-time jobs, into saving money. I graduated with honors, received a full scholarship to college across the country, and the day I left, I didn't say goodbye, not to my parents, not to my brothers, not to anyone. I simply walked away. At first, it hurt. There was a part of me that still hoped my absence would mean something to them, that maybe they would call or beg me to stay. But the phone never rang. There were no tears at my departure, no messages checking if I arrived safely. In their eyes, I was already gone long before I walked out the door. And so I started a new life. For years, I lived quietly, building something on my own. I had an apartment, a scholarship, and freedom. For the first time, I was in control of who I let into my life. My parents didn't call. My brothers didn't visit. And after a while, I stopped expecting them to. The silence became familiar, almost comfortable. But then, last month, everything changed. Out of nowhere, my phone started buzzing nonstop. Unknown numbers, voicemails from relatives I barely remembered, aunts, uncles, cousins. People who hadn't spoken to me in over a decade were suddenly desperate to reach me. I ignored them at first, blocking every number that came through. I thought it was strange, but I didn't care. They hadn't wanted me before, so why now? Then came the knock on my door, a Saturday morning. I opened it, and there they were, my parents, my brothers, my aunts and uncles, all crowded together, standing in my doorway like ghosts from a life I thought I'd buried. For a moment, I froze. Then instinct took over. I gave them the same cold stare they had given me my entire childhood. And finally, with deliberate calm, I let them inside. They sat on my couch, fidgeting, avoiding my gaze. I stayed standing, silent, until one of my aunts spoke. "Why have you been ignoring us? Why have you cut us off?" Her tone was almost accusatory, as if I were the one who had abandoned them. That was when I realized this was my moment. For the first time in my life, they had to listen, and I wasn't going to waste it. I started from the beginning. Slowly, deliberately, I recounted everything. How my mother refused to touch me. How they ignored me when I was hurt. How my brothers were celebrated while I was forgotten. How I had to scream, steal, and vandalize just to be noticed. How, even then, I was only an embarrassment to be silenced. With every word, my relatives' faces changed, confusion melting into shock, shock into disgust, disgust into anger. My mother tried to interrupt, her voice trembling with excuses, but I held up a hand and silenced her. For once, she would sit and listen. My father crossed his arms, glaring at me, but he didn't speak. Maybe he thought his silence would intimidate me. Not anymore. I continued, my voice steady, every word sharpened by years of pain. And then came the breaking point. My mother broke down, sobbing, and screamed, "Fine! You want the truth? You were never wanted. You were a mistake. I never wanted you, not then, not now." The room froze. My aunts gasped, their hands flying to their mouths. My uncle stared at her in disgust. My brothers looked away. And me? I smiled, because for the first time, she had said it out loud. The words I had always known but never heard. The truth was finally spoken, and it wasn't mine to carry alone anymore. She reached for me, still sobbing, trying to hug me, but I stepped back. My father leapt up, furious. "Don't you dare treat your mother like this," he shouted. But I didn't flinch. I simply pointed to the door, silent, cold, the same way they had treated me my entire life. One by one, my relatives turned on them. "Is this true? How could you? Shame on you." The accusations flew, their voices growing louder and louder, until my parents could no longer defend themselves. For the first time in their lives, they were the ones being exposed, the ones drowning in shame. And I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to break anything or burn their world down. I destroyed them with the one thing they could never ignore, the truth. That night, they left my apartment in silence, my relatives' disappointment following them out the door. And when it closed, I stood there for a long time, breathing in the stillness. For the first time, I felt peace. Not because they apologized, because they never truly did, but because I no longer carried their secret. I had turned their weapon, their silence, against them. I realized something then. Neglect doesn't erase a child. It doesn't erase his pain, his memories, or his worth. It only plants a seed. And one day, that forgotten child grows strong enough to return. When he does, silence becomes the sharpest revenge of all. You just watched true revenge, where every betrayal meets justice. If this story struck you, hit subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss the next twist. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? And have you ever felt like the forgotten one in your family?